In this video, I explore the similarities between the Sumerian god Enki, the Greek god Hephaestus, in addition to the Hebrew god Yahweh. By analyzing the texts of these ancient civilizations, I argue we can conclude the Greek smithy god Hephaestus and the Hebrew god Yahweh as derivative of the Sumerian god Enki. In particular, in this video, we're going to be talking about the Greek poet Homer's Iliad and Odyssey and 3 Sumerian epic poems, along with the book of Exodus from the Hebrew Bible. We can understand these similar themes and symbols used in the Sumerian, Greek, and Hebrew mythos as part of this larger story of creation myth, where ages of men described through the 4 metals and heroic ages, and chthonic deities with the symbolism of the underground play onto themes of sex and reproduction as allegory for the seasonality of nature, mankind, and civilization. And these are used as components to tell this grander story of the creation of the universe itself, and argue we can interpret Book 18 with the forging of Achilles' shield by Hephaestus in particular as creation myth. So let's read from the Iliad, Book 18. All day long they fought by the Scaean gates, and would have taken the city there and then, had not Apollo vouchsafed glory to Hector, and slain the valiant son of Menonius, after he had done the Trojans much evil. Therefore I, who I here is Thetis, and suppliant at your knees, if haply you may be pleased to provide my son, whose end is near at hand, with helmet and shield, with goodly greaves fitted with ankle clasp, and with a breastplate, for he lost his own when his true comrade fell at the hands of the Trojans, and he now lies stretched on earth in the bitterness of his soul. And Hephaestus answered, Take heart, and be no more disquieted about this matter. Would that I could hide him from death's sight when his hour is come, so surely as I can find him armor that shall amaze the eyes of all who behold it. When he had so said, he left her, and went to his bellows, turning him towards the fire, and bidding them do their office. 20 bellows blew upon the melting pots, and they blew blasts of every kind, some fierce to help him when he had need of them, and others less strong as Hephaestus wielded in the course of his work. He threw copper into the fire, and tin with silver and gold. He set his great anvil on its block, and with one hand grasped his mighty hammer, while he took the thongs in his other. Now this last line is one of the most interesting, in my opinion, of all Book 18, or maybe even the Iliad. This is the turning point. So here, Hephaestus wielded in the course of his work. He threw tough copper into the fire, and tin with silver and gold. He set his great anvil on its block, and with one hand grasped his mighty hammer, while he took the tongs in his other. So like the tin and the copper to the fire to create bronze, this age before the Iliad, and of Hephaestus and other gods of Olympus, and the gold and the silver, the ages of Zeus and Kronos, and then he goes to work on his new armor and shield for Achilles for the heroic age to finally come to a close and usher in the Iron Age, and it's like the Great Reset of 1300 BC or something, right? In seriousness, though, like today we have the Great Reset or Build Back Better, and all these races of people, the ages of men that collectively go into building this new era. Think about the transfer of intellect and resources have to go into propping up and growing like the international finance, and it's growing into the third world countries and urban areas and other like these other nefarious NGO organizations, right? It's like the metals going into Hephaestus' furnaces, like to create this new order after the fall of Troy and the ensuing Bronze Age collapse and beginning of the Iron Age, the time of Homer. And with the last part of the Iliad, like the funeral pyres and the burning of the bodies, one of the 2 greatest heroes of the heroic age, Hector, is consumed in Hephaestus' fire, and thus beginning this new order, this new age, and it all starts with Hephaestus is creating Achilles' shield and armor. And eventually Hephaestus gets to crafting the shield and helmet, and this part of the book I would argue is like a creation myth, very similar to the Sumerian poem Enki and the World Order, and Genesis 1, Day 6 in particular. And Homer uses the metaphor of the shield that Hephaestus creates, and it's on it that this representation of the heaven and earth, sun and moon are both depicted and created. And it's like, furthermore, on the shield there's like depictions of a plowed field and vineyards, cattle, pastures, sheep, and their sheepfolds are like their fenced-in pens, and a green field for ceremony and music. So by like the end of the making of the shield and the description of it, you're at the end of the Bronze Age, both like through the technology and culture, and also through the metals used and described. You're at the end of the Bronze Age, entering the Iron Age. It's a creation myth. Now reading from the Iliad, Book 18. First he shaped the shield so great and strong, adorning it all over and binding it round with a gleaming circuit in 3 layers, and the baldric was made of silver. He made the shield in 5 thicknesses, and with many a wonder did his cunning hand enrich it. He wrought the earth, the heavens, and the sea, the moon also at her full, and the untiring sun, with all the signs that glorify the face of heaven, the Pleiades, the Hyades, huge Orion, and the Bear, which men also call the Wain, in which it turns around ever in one place, facing. Orion, and alone, never dips into the stream of Oceanus. He wrought also a fair fallow field, large and thrice plowed already. Many men were working at the plow within it, turning their oxen to and fro, furrow after furrow. Each time that they turned on reaching the headland, a man would come up to them and give them a cup of wine, and they would go back to their furrows, looking forward to the time when they should again reach the headland. The part that they had plowed was dark behind them, so that the field, though it was of gold, still looked as if it was being plowed. Very curious to behold. He wrought also a field of harvest corn, and the reapers were reaping with sharp sickles in their hands. Swath after swath fell to the ground in a straight line behind them, and the binders bound them in bands of twisted straw. There were 3 binders, and behind them there were boys, who gathered the cut corn in armfuls, and kept on bringing them to be bound. Among them all the owner of the land stood by in all silence and was glad. The servants were getting a meal ready under an oak, for they had sacrificed a great ox, and were busy cutting him up, while the women were making a porridge of much white barley for the laborers' dinner. He wrought also a vineyard, golden and fair to see, and the vines were loaded with grapes. The bunches overhead were black, but the vines were trained on poles of silver. He ran a ditch of dark metal all around it, and fenced it with fence of tin. There was only one path to it, and by this the vintagers went when they would gather the vintage. Youths and maidens, all blithe and full of glee, carried the luscious fruit in plated baskets, and with him there went a boy who made sweet music with his lyre, and sang the Linus song with his clear boyish voice. He wrought also a herd of horned cattle. He made the cows of gold and tin, and they lowed as they came full speed out of the yards to go and feed among the waving reeds that grow by the banks of the river. All along with the cattle there went 4 shepherds, all of them in gold, and their 9 fleet dogs went with them. The god also wrought a pasture and a fair mountain dell, and a large flock of sheep, with a homestead and huts, and sheltered sheepfolds. Furthermore, he wrought a green, like that which Daedalus once made in Knossos for lovely Ariadne. Hereon there danced youths and maidens, whom all would woo, with their hands on one another's wrists. The maidens wore robes of light linen, and the youths well-woven shirts that were slightly oiled. The girls were crowned with garlands, while the young men had daggers of gold that hung by silver baldricks. Sometimes they would dance deftly in a ring with merry twinkling feet, as it were, a potter sitting at his work and making trial of his wheel to see whether it will run. And sometimes they would go all in line with one another, and much people were gathered joyously about the green. There was a bard also to sing to them and play his lyre, while 2 tumblers went about performing in the midst of them when the man struck up his tune. All around the outermost rim of the shield he set the mighty stream of the river Oceanus. Then, when he had fashioned the shield so great and so strong, he made a breastplate also that shone brighter than fire. He made a helmet, close-fitting to the brow and richly worked, with a golden plume overhanging it. And he made greaves also of beaten tin. Lastly, when the famed lame god had made all the armor, he took it and set it before the mother of Achilles, whereon she darted like a falcon from the snowy summits of Olympus, and bore away the gleaming armor from the house of Hephaestus. And next I'd like to read from the Sumerian epic Enki and the World Order, another creation myth, where Enki carries out the decrees of the chief god Enlil, and in doing so creates the life and natural order of the earth. Eventually the world has animals and plants and humans, but as the Bronze Age is reached, the world becomes more complex, and Enki, carrying out Enlil's decrees, doles out responsibilities to these new junior gods in this more technologically advanced world that comes along with the Bronze Age. And the scene that Hephaestus creates on Achilles' shield is kind of analogous to the poem Enki and the World Order, where the heavens and the earth are created by Enki. So let's compare the two. Enki and the World Order, lines 1 through 16. Grand eloquent Lord of heaven and earth, self-reliant, Father Enki, engendered by a bull, begotten by a wild bull, cherished by Enlil the great mountain, beloved by holy An, king, mace tree planted in the Apsu, rising over all lands, great dragon who stands in Eridu, whose shadow covers heaven and earth, a grove of vines, extending over the land. Enki, lord of plenty of the gods of Anu, Enki, mighty one of the Ikor, strong one of heaven and earth, your great house is founded in the Apsu, the great mooring post of heaven and earth, Enki, from whom a single glance is enough to unsettle the heart of the mountains. Whenever bison are born, or stags are born, or ibex are born, or wild goats are born, in meadows, in hollows, in the heart of the hills, in green, unvisited by man, you have fixed your gaze on the heart of the land like a reed. Lines 17 through 31. Counting the days and putting the months in their houses, so as to complete the years, and to submit the completed years to the assembly for a decision. Taking decisions to regularize the days. Father Enki, you are the king of the assembled people. You have only to open your mouth for everything to multiply, and for plenty to be established. Your branches green with their fruit do honor to the gods, and its forest is like a fleecy garment. Good sheep and good lambs do honor to when the prepared fields will accumulate stockpiles and stacks. There is oil, there is milk produced by the shepherd and cowpen. The shepherd sweetly sings his rustic song. The cowherd spends the day rocking his churns. The products would do honor to late lunches in the gods' great dining hall. Lines 32 through 37. Your word fills the young man's heart with vigor, so that like a thick-horned bull he butts about in the courtyard. Your word bestows loveliness on the young woman's head, so that the people in their settled cities gaze at her in wonder. Lines 38 through 47. Enlil, the great mountain, has commissioned you to gladden the hearts of the lords and rulers and wish them well, Enki, Lord of prosperity, Lord of wisdom, Lord, the beloved of An, the ornament of Eridu, who established commands and decisions, who well understands the decreeing of fates. You close up the days, and make the months enter their houses. You bring down, you have reached their number. You make the people dwell in their dwelling places. You make them follow their herdsmen. Lines 50 through 51. You turn their weapons away from their houses. You make people safe in their dwellings. When Father Enki goes forth to the inseminated people, good seed will come forth. When Enki goes forth to the good pregnant ewes, good lambs will be born. When he goes forth to the fecund cows, calves will be born. When he goes forth to the good pregnant goats, good kids will be born. If you go forth to the cultivated fields, to the good germinating fields, stockpiles and stacks can be accumulated on the high plain. Lines 84 through 85. Praise be to Enki, the much praised Lord, who controls all the arts and crafts, who takes decisions. And additionally, the Homeric hymn to Hephaestus seems to say the same thing as this poem to Enki. The smith craft god creates new materials in which to construct the Bronze Age world. With it, it brings order and abundance. And think how much more reliable and efficient using a metal tool would be than trying to use stone or wood for the same purpose. And everything changed from war to farming, and this is how we today know the Bronze Age, right? We know the dates it started and ended, just like how Enki counts the days, or starts the counting of the days. The Homeric hymn to Hephaestus. Sing, clear-voiced muse of Hephaestus, famed for inventions. With bright-eyed Athena, he taught men glorious crafts throughout the world. Men who before used to dwell in caves in the mountains, like wild beasts, but now that they have learned crafts through Hephaestus, the famed worker, easily they live a peaceful life in their own houses the whole year round. Be gracious, Hephaestus, and grant me success and prosperity. And Enki and Hephaestus are both gods that bring legitimacy to these new ruling orders. And like it says, Enki counts the days, months, and years. And that's how we know today. The Iliad ends the Bronze Age in Mycenaean Greece, along with pretty much every civilization except for Egypt in the Mediterranean and the Near East. The Iliad was the beginning of the end. In the poem, Enki and the World Order, with Enki, the days start counting new for this new ruling god of the Akkadians. Enlil, who supplants the Sumerian chief god Anu, And similar to how today we start counting the modern era as this birth of Christ. It's like kind of interesting too that Egypt was this lone survivor of the Bronze Age collapse. And there we have like the setting of Exodus around the same time, this late Bronze Age, with Moses and Yahweh, who I understand or I argue to be like Hephaestus and Enki. And the building of the shield in Book 18 of the Iliad bears resemblance to Exodus 35, where the exiled Hebrews make this tabernacle commanded by Yahweh. And even further, when comparing the Sumerian poems, Enki and the World Order, and an additional one, Enki's Journey to Nippur, we see the same metaphor with the building of Enki's water aquifer temple as a metaphor for creation. In Exodus 35, the Jewish God asks all the Israelites to give their gold, silver, and bronze, and other materials to make the temple or tabernacle. And I interpret it as like this is part of the Iliad where Hephaestus makes the shield of Achilles, where you can imagine the shield like the temple or tabernacle for both Yahweh and Enki. You could imagine the temple as symbols of like conquest and ages or races of men, like the Colossus in the book of Daniel, right? These conquered civilizations represented by metals that the temple, shield, or tabernacle are made of. And it shows you the power of mythology that these myths have outlasted empires and kingdoms till today, the present day. We still know them. So let's go ahead and read from it. Let me read from Exodus 35 now. Exodus 35. Moses assembled the whole Israelite community and said to them, "These are the things the Lord has commanded you to do. For 6 days work is to be done, but the seventh day shall be your holy day, a day of Sabbath rest to the Lord. Whoever does any work on it is to be put to death. Do not light a fire in any of your dwellings on the Sabbath day." So it says, do not light fire in any of your dwellings on the Sabbath day. And we can imagine fire as Hephaestus, and just like in Genesis, God rests on the seventh day, and here in Exodus, don't light a fire on the seventh day, a reference to, I can imagine, like the fire god, who is Yahweh. And I recognize Genesis 1, day 6, as kind of a recitation of Enki and the World Order. And it's interesting because book 18 of the Iliad that we're talking about is 666. And it's like, again, this association with the number 6 as well. So now continuing on from Exodus 35, materials for the tabernacle. Moses said to the whole Israelite community, "This is what the Lord has commanded. From what you have, take an offering for the Lord. Everyone who is willing to bring to the Lord an offering of gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and fine linen, goat hair, ram skin, dyed red, and another type of durable leather, acacia wood, olive oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil, and for the fragrant essence, and onyx stones and other gems to be mounted on the ephod and breastpiece. All who are skilled among you are to come and make everything the Lord has commanded, the tabernacle with its tent and its coverings, clasps, frames, crossbars, posts, and base, the ark with its poles and atonement cover and the curtain that shields it, the table with its poles and its articles and the bread of the presence, the lampstand that is for the light with its accessories, lamps and oil for the light, the altar of incense with its poles, the anointing oil and the fragrant incense, the curtain for the doorway at the entrance to the tabernacle, the altar of burnt offering with its bronze grating, its poles and all its utensils, the bronze basin with its stand, the curtains of the courtyard with its posts and base, and the curtain for the entrance to the courtyard, the tent pegs for the tabernacle and for the courtyard, and their ropes, the woven garments worn for ministering in the sanctuary, both the sacred garments for Aaron the priest and the garments for his son when they serve as priest. Again, this is a creation myth through themes and symbolisms formed into the larger metaphor of creating the universe. The tabernacle is made from metals and stones, and it has curtains and tents to shield or shade, and it's propped up by poles and posts. And if you remember from the poem Enki and the World Order, there is the symbolism of the mage tree or pole that forms the anchor for Enki's temple and influence as a cult when he rises up from the Apsu. And in the first line of the poem, it mentions heaven and earth and the chief god Anu. And then it says, Mage tree planted in the Apsu, rising over all lands, great dragon who stands in Eridu, whose shadow covers heaven and earth, a grove of vines extending over the land. So he's this great figure that is planted into the earth through the mage tree or pole. And Enki's cult is imagined as a vine that spreads over the earth, and through the spread of his cult and the shadow it casts, he creates this new Bronze Age order. Likewise, we can think of the posts that propped up the tents as creating the heavens and the earth in Exodus with the description of the tabernacle. And it's an allegory for the shade or influence of the Israelites' religion, an allegory for the conquest and ascendance of Semitic gods, either with the conquering Akkadians over the celestial Sumerian god Anu, or the Israelites over the Egyptians. And again, the metals and stones are both as symbols for themes of ages or races of men that have been essentially conquered or brought to worship these Semitic gods of the Akkadians and now the Israelites of Exodus, and used as symbolism for a creation myth. Compare this to another Sumerian creation myth, Enki's journey to Nippur, in a description of Enki's temple, where the temple of Enki is made of gold, silver, and lapis lazuli. And through the description of the temple, you have a creation myth where the temple is imagined as this altar in the heavens, and the temple is anchored in the earth through its pegs of cornelian that rose out of the apsu that props it up. And the temple itself is described as both this structure made of precious stones and metals, but also as symbolism of creation myth. And lapis lazuli, if you don't know, is this bright, deep blue color precious stone that could easily look like it's depicting sky and heavens and stars, like in creation myth. And I associate it with Egypt in like the Mediterranean Bronze Age, but mostly it's like this blue and gold combination that you when you see it, you assume you imagine like the headdress of an Egyptian. It's pretty striking. And the metals we can interpret like the light and day, as well as the night and darkness of the first days of creation in Enki's journey to Nippur, and that this altar acts as the door jamb of the heavens. It's roof beams of the temple that hold up the heavens itself, and through this door or staircase in his temple, you ascend up to heaven. And this door and staircase to heaven is imagined as a lion through a metaphor. So you can imagine his temple as the same as the tabernacle. Through all the materials and men needed to build the tabernacle, you're at the Bronze Age. The metals, the dyed and fine woven garments and linens, the oil, the skins of animals and leather works, all these goods are products of the Bronze Age and would require crafts and whole industries or classes and technologies of people to make from the Bronze Age. And so in Exodus, Yahweh asks all the Israelites who can help to create his tabernacle, whereas Enki creates this new order by decreeing responsibilities onto junior gods. So they end up both in these, like, with these new figures being created who have roles in this Bronze Age society of increasing complexity that has come under the influence of these Semitic gods. So let's read from Enki's journey to Nippur, lines 1 through 8. In those remote days when the fates were determined, in a year when An brought abundance, and the people broke through the earth like herbs and plants, then the Lord of the Apsu, King Enki the Lord who determines the fates, built up his temple entirely from silver and lapis lazuli. Its silver and lapis lazuli were the shining daylight, and to the shrine of the Apsu he brought joy. Lines 9 through 17. An artfully made bright crenellation rising out from the Apsu was created for Lord Enki. He built the temple from precious metal, decorated it with lapis lazuli, and covered it abundantly with gold. In Eridu he built the house on the bank. Its brickwork makes utterance and gives a voice. Its eaves roar like a bull. The temple of Enki bellows. During the night the temple praises its Lord and offers its best for him. Lines 18 through 25. Before Lord Enki, Izamud, the minister, praises the temple. He goes to the temple and speaks to it. He goes to the brick building and addresses it. Temple built from precious metal and lapis lazuli, whose foundation pegs are driven into the Apsu, which has been cared for by the prince in the Apsu, like the Tigris in the Euphrates. It's mighty and awe-inspiring. Joy has been brought into Enki's Apsu. And then furthermore, lines 26 through 32. Your lock has no rival. Your bolt is a fearsome lion. Your roof beams are the bull of heaven, an artfully made bright headgear. Your reed mats are like lapis lazuli, decorating the roof beams. Your vault is a bull raising its horns. Your door is a lion who seizes a man. Your staircase is a lion coming down on a man. Lines 33 through 43. Apsu, pure place which fulfills its purpose. Your Lord has directed his steps towards you. Enki, Lord of the Apsu, has embellished your foundation pegs with cornelian. He has adorned you with lapis lazuli. The temple of Enki is provisioned with holy wax. It is a bull obedient to its master, roaring by itself and giving advice at the same time, which Enki has surrounded with a holy reed fence. In your midst a lofty throne is erected. Your door jamb is the holy locking bar of heaven. So whether it's Enki's temple, Achilles' shield that Hephaestus crafts, or the Hebrew tabernacle that Yahweh commands, we are talking about creation myth, and we can identify through the themes of revolutionary chthonic figures whose birth and rise coincide with the ending of one political order and the ascension of another, told through the language and symbolism of these chthonic gods, of the underground, metals, seasonality, and nature, and we end up with this larger parable of creation, of the earth and heavens and life as the author of the poem knows it. And at the same time, these metals and materials that go into the construction of the tabernacle or Achilles' shield serve as allegory for the conquest or rise of these Semitic religions or cults through the vanquishing of these former civilizations and ages of men. The temples are built on the blood and treasure of these former people and serve as triumphal reminders of the deeds of the patriarchs of their people and the religion itself. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and look out for the next one in this series exploring the similarities between the Sumerian god Enki and the Greek god Hephaestus, along with the Hebrew deity Yahweh. See ya!